On to the main event as I continue to break down the debut episode of Al Haymon's Premier Boxing Champions. We got Keith Thurman, 24-0, 21 knockouts, versus Robert the Ghost Guerrero, 32-2, 1 draw, 18 KOs. Now, this is another excellent fight, and shouts out to Al Haymon. Kudos to him for putting together an excellent card for the first episode of bringing back or returning boxing to regular television. This fight, in my opinion, it really depends on which face both these fighters bring in the ring, right? They're both boxer punchers, but they both have gone the opposite direction in their most recent fights. For example, Keith Thurman's a boxer puncher. He's Keith one-time Thurman. He's known for going in there, throwing combinations, knocking motherfuckers out with his hooks, right? Only need to hit you one time. Recently, he's been boxing, right? Robert Guerrero, he was called the Ghost because he's a boxer puncher. He would get in, throw combinations, and then get back out. Now you see him, now you don't, right? That used to be Robert Guerrero's motto. But recently, he's been a slugger because his dad is talking about, he's a warrior! That bullshit, right? So he's been going in there, standing in the pocket, slugging, right? So it really depends which face these fighters bring to this fight. Let me start with Keith Thurman. Recently, as I just said, he fought Leonard Bundu. Recently, he's been boxing. He's boxed the shit out of Leonard Bundu. And the reason why he did it, this is what he says, and for the record, I 100% agree with him. He said he boxed in that fight because he wanted to show people that he's not a one-dimensional fighter. He wanted to show that he was versatile. He wanted to show that he's able to move in the ring, use his head, think, adjust. He's able to do all the things that, say, a Floyd Mayweather can do, and still and outclass his opponent, dominate him, right? And I 100% agree with that. I think that's okay, simply because in boxing, this is the last sport where you want to be labeled as one-dimensional, right? Motherfuckers that break down boxing, such as myself, will eat your ass up, and we will make a whole lot of money off your fights. You know what I'm saying? Because you're labeled as one-dimensional. So you want to show that versatility when you're given the opportunity to do so, right? So I have no qualms about that. But the problem here is that if we get the Robert Guerrero, right, that is the one from 2010 that fought Yoel Casamayor and dominated him, well, then we're going to have a problem here, right? Because he's going to be the Ghost in this fight. And you can't, with basically Keith Thurman's ability, I don't think he'd be able to outbox the old Robert Guerrero, right? In that case, he would have to be the original Keith Thurman, the normal Keith Thurman. One time, the one that goes in there, applies pressure, you know, the one that's he leads his right hook, or sets up his right hook with a jab, or he may lead with a left hook, then follow up with the right hook, right? Throw 2-3 punch combinations and get back out and do the same thing again. That's the one we need to see if Robert Guerrero is the Ghost in this fight, right? So it just depends on what face these fighters bring. Robert Guerrero, like I said, same thing. If he's going to go in there and be a fucking warrior, you know, per his pops, right? Well, then all Keith Thurman has to do is pretty much try to outbox him, which is exactly what he did against Leonard Bundu. Do exactly the same thing you did against Leonard Bundu against the New Warrior. Robert the New Warrior Guerrero, right? Just outbox him. Because in his most recent fight against Kamagai, he was like the dumbest motherfucker I'd ever seen. This was a fight that he was supposed to go in there, pretty much a tune-up, easily win, and then on to the next opponent. Well, his face was all fucked up. He was getting hit way too much. You know what I'm saying? So he was a completely different fighter. If that fighter comes in the ring, all Keith Thurman has to do is outbox him. I think he wins easily in that case. Because that particular Robert Guerrero can be outboxed by damn near anyone in the welterweight division. You know what I'm saying? And that is the one thing a boxer loves, is a motherfucker that's going to just come at him. When I was a boxer, that's what I loved. I loved sparring against guys that were just going to flail against, or, just throw hooks and flail their arms at me. I was like, yeah, I'm about to eat this motherfucker up. Easy work. You know what I'm saying? We love that shit. That's what boxers love. Right? And that's what Keith Thurman's going to do. So, if he comes in as the ghost, right, then I think he has the best shot, in my opinion. Because let me compare. Let me make this not compare, let me make this contrast. Keith Thurman's ability to box is better than Robert Guerrero's ability to apply pressure, in my opinion. And the main reasoning of this is because Robert the Ghost Guerrero's power is non-existent, at 147. Now, he has enough power to wear down his opponent, right? But I feel Keith Thurman has showed us in the last fight, actually in a lot of his fights, depends on, what type of analyst you are of the sport. In my opinion, he showed me in a lot of his fights that he's smart enough to where if somebody's applying pressure, he can adjust. Look at the Diego Chavez fight. In the beginning rounds of that fight, he was applying pressure and he was getting clipped. He got hit by a lot of fucking uppercuts in the beginning of that fight. He actually got hurt. You know what I'm saying? He also got hit by a lot of right hooks. Diego Chavez's money punch. But what ended up happening? He adjusted and he ended up knocking Diego Chavez out. So, Robert the Ghost Guerrero, for him to actually have a chance to win this fight, in my opinion, he needs to go back to the Ghost. He needs to go back to who he was in 2010. And he's no fucking slouch, believe me. He's a great fighter. He only lost to an elite fighter. He lost to Gamilel Diaz back in 2005, but he avenged that loss with a 6-round KO. So it's kind of like that loss is a race. Plus, that loss was 10 years ago. I mean, he was coming into his own at that time. But after that, he only lost to Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? So he's an excellent fighter. He's no fucking slouch. It's just the fact that the change in his strategy or his fighting style is not an advantage for him in this fight. He needs to go back to the Ghost. And actually, I hope he does. Because if he does go back to the old Robert Guerrero, man, we got the makings of a great fucking matchup. If he goes in there and he becomes a warrior again, you know what I'm saying, then it's gonna be an easy win. Possibly, I don't think he'll knock Robert Guerrero out. Robert Guerrero's never been knocked out. He has an excellent chin, but I think there's gonna be some oh shit moments where he's gonna look like he might get knocked out. You know what I'm saying? But he'll cruise to an easy win. Keith Thurman would. So I hope the Ghost goes back to the Ghost. I hope he devised an excellent strategy. I mean, matter of fact, let me go back to the Diego Chavez fight. Chavez was applying pressure, but if you go back and look at the first 4 rounds of that fight, maybe the first 3, a lot of his combinations were set up with the jab. He was coming forward. He wasn't jumping in and out or nothing, but he was coming forward. He was setting up the jab. And that was confusing Keith Thurman because he's like, well, Diego Chavez, he's a slugger. He's going to try to throw that hook. Well, that jab was confusing him because he was waiting on the hook. So he could slip that and come up with his power punches. That's how Keith Thurman was getting caught. So, actually, the Ghost, man, Robert Guerrero, all he has to do is see that, look at that, look at the success Chavez had in the beginning of the fight, and just reciprocate that. But do it your way, the way you used to fight, right? I'm gonna tell you 2 things. And this may shock a couple people. Number one, the first one shouldn't shock anybody. I have Keith Thurman winning this fight by unanimous decision. I feel that Robert Guerrero has already changed his style. His dad is still his fucking trainer. You know what I'm saying? One of the dumbest trainers in boxing. So I feel that he's already changed his style to this warrior type. And I think he's going to go in there and get outboxed by Keith Thurman. Now, Keith Thurman did say he's going to go in there and look for the KO. And that is the wrong strategy for him to take against Robert Guerrero if Robert Guerrero is applying relentless pressure. Now, knowing Keith Thurman's mentality, his ability to adjust, I believe he will do that. Even if he goes in the fight in the beginning of the fight looking for the knockout, I think he's going to adjust and go back to the Keith Thurman we saw against Leonard Bundu, and he's going to easily win from that point that he makes that change. Um, but the second thing I wanted to say, and that this will shock people, is that if Robert Guerrero wins, it'll be excellent for boxing because this will fucking shake up the welterweight division. Because Robert Guerrero has kind of been seen as he's a good fighter, but he had his greatest years as a lightweight, right? Not really making too much noise at welterweight. He did dethrone, well, not really dethrone him, but he beat Andre Berto. But this is the Andre Berto that a lot of people thought lost to Luis Collazo back in 2009, January of 2009, right? So a lot of people after that particular fight, they were like, Andre Berto is kind of overrated. And, Robert Guerrero came up from 140 and dominated. Well, not really dominated, but he won the fight. There was no controversy there. So people, aren't really like, Robert Guerrero is the shit at 147. But if he beats Keith Thurman, someone who's very hyped, like I said, is pretty much in a situation where this is his second test. His first test was against Jan Zavek, the former IBF welterweight champion. That was a test that moved him from a prospect to a contender. And this test is supposed to move him from a contender to an elite fighter. Someone who's pretty much getting a lot of attention to where if he wins this fight, he will be deemed elite in the welterweight division. If Robert Guerrero puts a wrench in that plan, this will shake up the welterweight division. And it'll open up a lot of fucking possibilities. So, I see Keith Thurman winning. For the state of boxing, I hope Robert Guerrero wins. But it is what it is. What do y'all think? Do you think Keith Thurman and Robert Guerrero, this is going to be a good matchup? Do you think Robert Guerrero should be a warrior? Or do you think he should go back to the Robert Guerrero that dominated Joel Casamayor back in 2010? The ghost, in and out, now you see me, now you don't. Do you think Keith Thurman should try to outbox Robert Guerrero? Or do you think he should go back to one time, knocking motherfuckers out with the right or the left hook? One time, power punch in either hand, right? Let me know what y'all think. Do what you do in the comment section. Will be real. This is real talk for real fans. 1.